Stand by. Oh, what's up, smarty people? It's KeysDAN with RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com, coming to you live and in living color from the Radio What studios. And this is my podcast, What Makes You Smarter? It's an extension of the RadioWhat.com internet radio station that I've been running for quite some time. And if you need DJ services, where do I always send you? DJLittleRock.com. One more time. DJLittleRock.com. Check availability and get a free price quote, and maybe you could have me at your next event. You know I like to party with the people. The people need to be entertained. Are you not entertained? Make your next thing a big one. This week's shows, I will be at the Rab on Friday night, my one public gig, the regular video dance party karaoke jam at the Rab in Conway, Arkansas. Oh, full bar, kitchens open, pool tables, pool tournament Friday night. So if you want to try your hand at playing pool and possibly make some money while you're doing it, check out the Rab, Conway, Arkansas. You're the stars of the show. It's a karaoke jam. Always fun Friday nights. Oh, and then Saturday I'm in Hot Springs for a birthday party. And then Sunday I'm in Little Rock, Arkansas for the marathon. So it's going to be a full weekend for me. I'm kind of excited about that. Also, if you'd like to tell your story or hear the stories of others, I encourage you to check out my other podcast. It's called What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. Now, on with the show. Today on the program, 10 things you need to know today for Thursday, March 3rd, 2022. 10 things you need to know today. Number 1, Russia claims control of Ukraine ports as battles rage in other cities. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's office said Wednesday that the country's forces were still fighting around Kherson, despite Russia's claim that it had taken, quote, complete control, end quote, of the Black Sea port. Mayor Igor Kolokayev said Russian soldiers had entered the city, and he asked them not to shoot civilians. Russian forces continue to hammer Kharkiv, Ukraine's second largest cities, with airstrikes, but Russia's offensive against the capital, Kyiv, appeared to have stalled. Russia's defense ministry acknowledged extensive casualties for the first time, saying 498 Russian troops had been killed and 1,597 injured. Ukraine said it had killed 5,840 Russian troops. It put civilian death toll at 2,000. This is according to the Associated Press and the Wall Street Journal. Number 2, UN General Assembly condemns Russian invasion of Ukraine. The United Nations General Assembly voted Wednesday to condemn Russia for invading Ukraine. The resolution, which passed 141-5, called for Russia to, quote, immediately cease its use of force against Ukraine, end quote, and withdraw all its military forces from its smaller neighbor. 35 nations, including India, Cuba, and China, abstained. Belarus, Syria, North Korea, and Eritrea were the only countries to vote with Russia against the measure. President Biden said Russian President Vladimir Putin had underestimated the unified global opposition to Moscow's unprovoked attack. Quote, he did it because he thought he could split NATO, split Europe, and split the United States, end quote, Biden said. Quote, we're going to demonstrate to the whole world no one could split this country, end quote. This is according to the Washington Post. Number 3, January 6 panel tells court Trump allies may have committed crimes. The House Select Committee investigating the January 6, 2021 Capitol attack said in a court filing Wednesday that former President Donald Trump and a right-wing lawyer may have participated in a, quote, criminal conspiracy, end quote, to overturn President Biden's victory in the 2020 election. Quote, evidence and information, let me start that quote over. Quote, evidence and information available to the committee establishes a good faith belief that Mr. Trump and others may have engaged in criminal and or fraudulent acts, end quote, the committee said in a filing. The committee is trying to persuade a judge to grant it access to emails from the lawyer, John Eastman, who is trying to deny the panel access by claiming attorney-client privilege. A Trump spokesperson did not immediately comment. Prosecutors have not accused Trump or Eastman of any crimes. This is according to CNN and the Wall Street Journal. Number 4, Fed chair says rate hikes still coming despite Ukraine uncertainty. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell said Wednesday that Russia's invasion of Ukraine had created some economic uncertainty, but the central bank plans to stick to its plan to carefully raise interest rates to fight high inflation. Powell acknowledged that the fighting in Ukraine, which has prompted the United States and Western allies to hit Moscow with sanctions, was causing, quote, tremendous hardship, end quote, that could affect other countries. Quote, the implications for the U.S. economy are highly uncertain, and we will be monitoring the situation closely, end quote, Powell said in remarks prepared for dual appearances this week before House and Senate committees. The Fed is expected to get started with a quarter-point interest hike at its meeting in mid-March. This is according to CNBC. Number 5, judge rejects New York Attorney General's bid to dissolve NRA. A New York State judge on Wednesday rejected New York Attorney General Letitia James' attempt to dissolve the National Rifle Association. New York Supreme Court Judge Joel Cohen said the state's allegations of corruption and mismanagement by top NRA officials fell short of showing the public harm necessary to justify the, quote, corporate death penalty, end quote, for the gun rights group. Cohen, however, allowed most of James's case against the NRA to go forward. James filed a lawsuit 18 months ago accusing the NRA and its leaders of violating state laws for nonprofits by using tens of millions of dollars of the group's money for excessive expenses and contracts that benefited their relatives and close associates. This is according to the Wall Street Journal. Number 6, first January 6 trial begins. Prosecutors and defense attorneys made their arguments Wednesday in the first case related to the January 6, 2021 Capitol attack to go to a jury trial. Assistant U.S. Attorney Jeffrey Nessler told the jury that the defendant, Guy Reffitt of Texas, boasted that he, quote, lit the match that started the fire, end quote, in the riot aiming to block lawmakers from certifying then-President Donald Trump's election loss to President Biden. William Welch, Reddiff's court-appointed attorney, told jurors Reffitt didn't go into the Capitol and that the case against Reffitt was based on, quote, bragging and a lot of hype, end quote. In another January 6 case, Joshua James, a member of the far-right Oath Keepers extremist group, on Wednesday became the first person to plead guilty to the seditious conspiracy in connection with the riot as part of a plea deal. This is according to CNBC News and ABC News. Well, it's according to NBC News and ABC News. Number 7, Google to require workers to return to offices in April. Google said that it would require employees to return to its U.S., UK, and Asia Pacific offices to work about 3 days per week starting in April, on April 4. All Google workers returning to offices will have to be fully vaccinated against COVID-19 or get an exemption. The move marked the internet giant's first step towards ending remote work policies as COVID-19 cases drop sharply as the Omicron variant-driven surge subsides. Google parent Alphabet is the latest in a wave of big technology and finance companies beginning to require workers to come back to the office. Some companies, however, have said they are making voluntary remote work policies permanent. This is according to Reuters. Number 8, Representative Van Taylor of Texas apologizes for affair and drops reelection bid. Representative Van Taylor, Republican Texas, dropped his bid for a third term in Congress on Wednesday, conceding the GOP runoff to rival candidate Keith Self after admitting to an extramarital affair, end quote. Oh, quote, about a year ago, I made a horrible mistake that has caused deep hurt and pain among those I love most in this world. I had an affair. It was wrong, and it was the greatest failure of my life, end quote, Taylor wrote in an email to supporters. The Dallas Morning News reported. Taylor reportedly had an affair with Tanya Joya Georgelis, who has been called the, quote, ISIS bride, end quote, because she is the widow of an infamous American who joined the Islamic State. Self is a former judge, will become the nominee under Texas law if Taylor withdraws in writing to the state party chair. This is according to the Dallas Morning News and National File. Number 9, Florida governor tells high school students to remove masks. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, Republican, on Wednesday told a group of high school students to remove their masks during an event at the University of South Florida on Wednesday. Tampa Bay's NBC affiliate reported, quote, you did not have to wear those masks. I mean, please take them off, end quote, DeSantis said as he approached the podium. Several of the students standing behind the podium laughed. Most of them removed their face coverings. Quote, honestly, it's not doing anything, end quote, said DeSantis, a longtime critic of COVID restrictions. Quote, we've got to stop with this COVID theater. So if you want to wear it, fine. But this is ridiculous, end quote. Democrat challenging DeSantis in November's gubernatorial election reacted to the remarks by calling the governor, quote, heartless, end quote, and a bully. This is according to WFLA and Politico. Number 10, Paralympics reverse course and ban Russian athletes. The International Paralympic Committee said Thursday that competitors from Russia and Belarus, quote, will no longer be allowed to participate, end quote, in the Beijing 2022 Paralympic Winter Games due to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The IPC had announced Wednesday that athletes from the two countries would be allowed to compete, but only as, quote, neutrals, end quote, under the Paralympic flag. The Winter Paralympics start Saturday with the opening ceremonies on Friday. Quote, at the IPC, we are very firm believers that sports and politics should not mix, end quote. IPC President Andrew Parsons said in a statement, quote, however, by no fault of its own, the war has now come to these games, end quote. Many members had said their countries would not compete if Russia did, he added. This is according to BBC News. That's 10 things you need to know today for Thursday, March 3rd, 2022. Thank you so much for listening. Just trying to fill my head with knowledge. And if you like the sound of my voice, take the journey with me. Won't you join me? Stay tuned to this feed for more interesting things, or at least things I find interesting. Also, stay tuned to this feed. If you'd like to tell your story or hear the stories of others, I encourage you to check out my other podcast. It's called What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. That's it for this edition of What Makes You Smarter. It's KeysDAN, RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com. Peace. I'm out of here.